Hello, everybody. Can you hear me okay? Okay. No. Sorry, that may be better. Welcome to the September 8, 2023 meeting at the Rotary Club of Beavercreek. I want to thank our greeters, our exchange student, Henry Guden. Was I close? Oh, no, Guden. All right, there we go. No L, my bad. Or no pronunciation of the L. Guden. Guden. All right. Yeah, I'll butcher that forever. Dave Brandenburg and Beth Handwork as well. Eric Marcus for being our ticket master and stand-in secretary today. We thank our program committee, Pete Bales, Mark Weinstein, and Mike Swick. Prayers for Mike Swick, who is recuperating at Trinity from a broken leg. And we think we have a card. There is a card going around. So, up front. Okay, so please sign that if you would. Yeah, maybe we'll pass that around. Okay. All right. Jim Gundel, thank you for your work on the website. Appreciate it. I would like to invite Denny Jarvie into the invocation.
Well, good afternoon. Would you join me in prayer? Oh, Holy Creator, help us to understand that no matter what name is given, or what language or culture is expressed, the philosophy of the Golden Rule is indeed the most true guidepost by which we should mark the trails of our existence here. And in our culture, we live by and work towards the four-way test. Remind us that if this concept were universally held as a standard that people of all nations and all faiths, there wouldn't be any war, and we'd be able to handle hunger, we'd be able to reduce crime against one another. We thank you for the blessing of this opportunity to serve you. Thank you for this food. Amen.
Thanks, Denny. All right. Well, Eric will be with the secretary's report here shortly. I think we have 100% attendance. Mark that down. Okay. Eric, do you have a secretary's report for us?
Yeah, it keeps changing. I really check someone else in and then I can get it.
While he's looking that over, we're gonna have a couple of clipboards going around. Sign up. So next weekend we're at one of the Beavercreek parks, mulching playground area. The following weekend we'll be at the new park working on trail maintenance and clearing. So please sign up. 9 to 11, easy work. Mostly, and we appreciate it. Eric?
Okay, we have 32 Beavercreek Rotarians here for 56.4%, and we have 2 guests. Amanda Hayes has a special guest.
I'm sorry, my husband David Hayes.
And Brian Lincoln has a special guest, as always.
Oh, my beautiful wife, Karen.
Eric?
That's one.
All right. I would ask Don Adams to come forward with the Sergeant at Arms. As he's on his way up, we also would ask for prayers for Stephen Brown's parents. They were in a motorcycle accident. Most of you probably have heard that. They're recovering okay, but then in the middle of it, they had to put their family dog down. So adding insult to injury.
Thank you, sir. There is one quick thing that I wanted to bring up. On October 6th, it's a Friday.
At Southern Ohio Brewery, there's a Pints to End Polio that's being sponsored by our incoming District Governor, Donnie B. Starts at 5 o'clock, so if you want to come in or go to that, please do.
I think that's fine.
Do what?
I think that's fine.
Just making sure everybody's settled.
Thank you.
All right. Today is September 8th, the 251st day of the year. There's 114 days that remain till the end of the year. Amazing. It's International Literacy Day. National 401k Day. National Actors Day that probably isn't being celebrated since they're all on strike. National Date Nut Bread Day. National Dog Walker Day. It's National Parton Day. So, Parton. And Star Trek Day. We also celebrate National Biscuits and Gravy Week. So, which is very important. National Day of Prayer and Remembrance for remembering 9/11. That's the closest weekend to 9/11, which really is next weekend. National Payroll Week Day. National Waffle Week Day. Popcorn Days. Popcorn Festival's tomorrow. And Sobriety Checkpoint Week. This day in history, in 1504, Michelangelo's statue of David was unveiled in Florence. I just found out that there is a statue of David in Louisville, Kentucky that I was not aware of. Many times I've been there. There's one right downtown. In 1565, the first permanent European settlement in the U.S. was founded at St. Augustine, Florida. In 1858, Abraham Lincoln supposedly said in a speech, "You may fool all the people some of the time. You can even fool some of the people all of the time, but you can't fool all the people all the time." And I think you could talk better than me too. But in 1883, the Northern Pacific Railroad on this last strike, Independence Creek, Montana. Oh, I ran a really good time. In 1916, President Woodrow Wilson signed the Emergency Revenue Act, doubling the rate of income tax and adding inheritance and munitions profits tax. In 1930, Blondie, the comic strip, was first published. It's still out there today. It's in 2,000 newspapers, 47 countries, and 35 languages. And in 1966, the first episode of Star Trek was there. In 1985, Pete Rose tied Ty Cobb's record of 4,191 hits. In the club, we've had some birthdays. Randy Grosjean, September 3rd. And for those of you who don't know, Randy's mother passed away about a week ago. So we're simply to let them. Mike Hadley, September 6th. Jack Henderson, September 3rd. And Michael Zwick, September 6th. That's true. Member anniversary, Mike Canada, 7 years in the club. I was looking for some things to talk about today, and I figured I'd go back to the things that make you go, How is it possible to have a civil war? If the world is a stage, where's the audience sitting? If the number 2 pencil is so popular, why is it still number 2? And why is the alphabet in the order that it's in? Is it because of the song? If I melt dry-eyed, can I take a bath without getting wet? How do they get the deer to cross at that yellow road sign? How do you know that honesty is the best policy until you've tried some of the others? How do you throw away a garbage can? Do you realize how many holes there could be that people would just take the time and take the dirt out of them? And if a word is misspelled in the dictionary, how do we know? What happens to an 18-hour bra after 18 hours? Why do tourists go to the top of tall buildings and then put money in telescopes to look at the people down on the street? Why is it that night falls but day breaks? And why is it that you must wait until night to call it a day? When your pet bird sees you reading the newspaper, does he wonder why you're just sitting there staring at the carpet? And what happened to the first 6 ups? My neighbor banged on the wall at 4:30 this morning. Can you believe it? Lucky I was still up listening to music. They banged and shouted, "Can we have a little respect, please?" I shouted back, "I'm not a big Aretha Franklin fan, but let's give it a shot." Two old women were sitting on a bench waiting for their bus. The buses were running late and a lot of time passed. Finally, one woman turned to the other and said, "You know, I've been sitting here so long, my butt fell asleep." The other woman turned and said, "I know, I hear it snoring." There was a boy that met a girl. The girl said, "Every time I see you smile, I feel like inviting you to my place." And the boy smiled and said, "Well, thank you. Are you single?" And she said, "No, I'm a dentist." There was a small boy that came running down the stairs and shouted, "Mom, Mom, I cleaned my room without being told." Well, said the mother, "That's wonderful. Thank you very much. It'll save me a lot of trouble and it shows you're growing up." "Yeah, but Mom, don't jump to conclusions." And she said, "What do you mean conclusions?" "Yeah, Mom, this isn't going to become a habit." There was an idiot who decided to start a chicken farm, so he bought 100 chickens to start. A month later, he returned to the dealer for another 100 chickens because all of the first lot had died. A month later, he came back to the dealers for another 100 chickens, but the second lot had died also. He asked the guy that was buying it, "What do you think I'm doing wrong?" "I think I may be planting up too deep." Yeah, they're not always good. What can I say? As always, I'd like to leave you with a couple of positive quotes. Life is really simple, but we insist on making it complicated. And our prime purpose in this life is to help others. And if we can't help them, at least don't hurt them. Today's lines: if you watch the original Star Trek, that's $1. If you've not read a book in the last month, that's $1. If you still read Blondie, that's $1. If you saw Pete Rose play, that's $1. If you're not going to the popcorn festival, that's $1. And if you're not wearing your rodeo gun, that's $1.
Thanks, Tom. All right. Happy bucks. Who's got a happy buck? Colin.
Happy, but my Mustang was stolen last week and recovered last Sunday, but they woke up real early to tell me they got it. It's in rehab in Germain right.
Brian.
A couple of happy bucks. One, Beavercreek football won last Friday, 9-8, and we got a Springboro home game tonight against the 0-3 Springboro. What are they? The Wildcats? Panthers. So if you're not doing anything, come out and see if we can win another one.
All right. Other happy butt. Jonathan.
Give a happy buck, our son, we wanted to see how tough he was, so, we asked him to play football this year, and, he was excited about it. He then, was pushed down. We thought he was hurt. We pushed through another touchdown, practiced 2 days, and then we found out he did have a buckle fracture in his wrist. However, he then got a hard cast, and he said, I want to play. So, we found out real quick that he's a pretty tough kid and enjoyed playing football. So, happy buck.
Other happy bucks. Get a couple, oh, Brandon, go ahead.
Two, they both kind of sound sad, but, Ashley's grandmother passed away 2 weeks ago. She got to go home to see the funeral. She lived to be 97. And our greatest excitement was that 3 times she got to meet Hunter. And she told us she always loved, we update this Google Drive with photos of Hunter all the time. And she said it was the highlight of every day. So we were just very happy they got to meet that she lived a wonderful 97 years. And then 2 weeks ago, my father, who is the fittest man I know, had a severe heart attack in the middle of the night. And apparently he had a 99% blockage, 99% blockage, and a 77% blockage. And like I said, this is a man who is extremely fit, but we learned he is predisposed. So I am going to be getting some tests done to see if I am predisposed. But they got him to the hospital. He had a triple bypass. He is recovering and well, which is good because I know he has more traveling to do. So we're just happy he's still here.
One last one, my husband's actually gonna do it. Happy buck.
I guess I'm doing a happy buck.
Better not be some kind of political advertisement. There's a fine involved there. So.
I'm not paying any fine. As the prosecutor, I do support Michael's House, which is it's a child advocacy center in Green County. And I'm just letting you know that on the 16th of September, if you like beer, and if you like supporting organizations that help children, at the Wandering Griffin, they're having a fundraiser from 6 to 9. I'm sorry, from 5 to 8. And we'd love to have as many people there as we can. So if you're interested, please come and see me, and I'll be happy to give you the information. And last weekend, can I do it? My wife and I celebrated 25 years together.
Congratulations, Eric. You're the only Eric back there.
I have a happy buck. Tomorrow, I am gonna go to an important meeting in Columbus. There's 100,000 people supposed to show up at this event. And hopefully the Buckeyes can beat Trestles, well, it's not even Trestles anymore, the president can beat Youngstown State.
Other happy bucks. JD.
So in line with Brian, the marching band started up a couple weeks ago. They performed tonight at the football game at halftime. There will not be a post game, so if you're only wanting to watch the band, do not come for post game because there will not be one. So if you want to watch it, it'll be at halftime tomorrow. They're performing their first competition at Hillman and Bradley, and then Sunday at 12:30 they will be at Popcorn Fest on Sunday. So
All right.
the band.
Any others? Any announcements? Elizabeth.
There's another clipboard going around somewhere for Sunday, October 1st. Our club will once again be hosting a comfort station for the Tour de Gem, which is the bicycle race that occurs in the Miami Valley. And it's happening about 10:30 to 3 when we staff it at Trayvine Elementary. And if you haven't worked this before, it is a good time. There's a fire truck out there, and thank you, Beavercreek Township, for once again having that presence. We've got music, we have a pickle juice station, I mean, everything that's needed. It's a good time, so please sign up to help out and to make sure that all the bikers feel comfortable.
So that is clearly why that's my better half. I bring up projects for your shoveling mulch and clearing trails. She's got pickles and music and all that stuff. So don't only sign up for that, but sign up for the other work.
We had one cancellation to man our booth at the Popcorn Festival. So Sunday from 1 to 3, if I could have a volunteer to fill that slot, I would appreciate it. Let me know if you can before you leave today. Thanks.
JD?
What was the tour the gym time?
We usually staff it between 10:30 and 3.
There's a clipboard going around somewhere.
It's a very large.
There's a herd of clipboards. Okay, ticket drawing, half the tip proceeds, as you recall, go to the Christmas basket project we do. Number is 956029. Ed Phillips. Joker hunting again. We're just gonna get it off you slowly, $5 a week.
You know where it's at?
I have no idea. What's on the tape? Nope.
Not a joke.
High crows, but no Joker. So you really made $4. Yeah. All right, I'm gonna introduce Brian Lampton for our inductions today.
Sir? I got it right here. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's always a special day when we get to induct a new member. Today is extra special because we're inducting 2 new members. At this time, Deborah Gross, please stand and be recognized. Born and raised here in Fairborn, Deborah's mother worked at the base. She attended the original Fairborn High School and was involved in the school paper. She worked for AT&T and attended Wright State and Sinclair, just kept getting promoted with AT&T and started her own company in Beavercreek, working with AFRL. Deborah ran and grew the Dayton Defense Corporation, connecting business with government. Under her leadership, that organization grew to over 320 members, representing over 15,000 employees. She has since retired, and then the DDC took over the Dayton Defense Corporation. She started with the Dayton Development. She also started the Dayton Development Education Foundation to provide tuition for STEM educational opportunities to local students. There was also a board member of the Dayton Performing Arts. Her husband passed away a few years ago from brain cancer, and he was an avid golfer. And she had a neat golf story. She decided to take up the game since her husband was an avid golfer. And in Deborah fashion, as she called it, she took a few golf lessons, booked a 3-day golf trip to Kentucky because she was going to master it in 3 days. Okay. That's right. She was introduced to an organization at that time called the Executive Women's Golf Association, and they did not have a chapter in Dayton. Well, there is one now because she started one. Her and her husband traveled around the world trying to golf in as many places as possible. She has 3 children, Melanie and Sherry, who are twins, age 47, and Paul, age 46. She's got a lot more on her resume, but due to time, we're going to move along. Her Rotary sponsor is Rick Corrales and will be pinned by Rick. Deborah, you may be seated. Ryan Rushing, please stand and be recognized. He is young, but he's accomplished. Born and raised in St. Louis, Missouri, his family then moved to Grand Rapids, that state up north, and finally to Beavercreek. He attended Beavercreek High School. When he moved here, he didn't know anyone, so he wanted to get involved. So he applied for and became the student director of the plays at the high school. Ryan earned his Bachelor of Poli-Sci from Wright State and Masters of Public Administration, also from Wright State. While at Wright State, he received a call from then Governor Kasich and was appointed as one of the 2 students that sits on the Board of Trustees at Wright State. He was the finance director for the city of Carlisle and also the interim city manager before he became Beavercreek Township's 2nd administrator. He was appointed to Beavercreek Board of Zoning Appeals and interned at the Greene County Treasurer's Office. He was also elected to Beavercreek City Council and was also our fiscal officer for Beavercreek Township. While active with a major fundraising campaign at Wright State, a lot of you will remember this, he got to meet and hang out with Tom Hanks. Because one of my questions is the most famous person. Well, that is about as famous as you could be right there, Tom Hanks. You had dinner with him. A bunch of you at a table, right? Ryan is on the board of trustees at El Puente, which provides after-school tutoring for local high school students. And the tutoring is for English as a second language. Yeah. He's also past president of the Beavercreek Alumni Association. Ryan enjoys classic cars, classic rock, movies, and Major League Baseball. He is a St. Louis Cardinal fan. He's allowed. That's where you're from, right? His Rotary sponsor is Alex Zaharia. So Ryan, you may be seated. Deborah and Ryan, you know, today you'll become associated with one of the largest, most prestigious service clubs in the world. More than 1.2 million men and women, 33,000 clubs from 200 countries. The magic keys to the gates of friendship and respect wherever you go will be while you wear your Rotary pin. We are very pleased that you've chosen to join us. Beavercreek Rotary is the service club of choice for people who make Beavercreek the best community. We're fortunate to have leaders in finance, business, education, government, healthcare, building, construction, science, and the arts. People who can and do make a difference. Because of these leaders, this club has the strength and the will and the power to make the difference in this community. We are delighted you have agreed to join us. You too are leaders. We know you both have the head and the heart to understand and practice the message of Rotary in your everyday lives. You have met high standards. You possess a degree of integrity and are prepared to pursue the truth wherever you find it, bringing additional purpose to your lives. The message of Rotary is really quite simple: to encourage and foster the ideal of service. Our motto, service above self. You will need to personalize this in your own life. You will discover how well our club follows this motto, how we endow the community with our appeals, and for your personal focus. And we know you'll share your talents and gifts with all of the projects this club undertakes. There are a few things we ask of our members: attendance at our weekly meetings, and if you can't make a Friday afternoon, perhaps Tuesday at the Xenia Rotary or Wednesday at the Fairborn Rotary, for example. A prompt response to your quarterly invoice. And again, selection of that particular area of service that most appeals to you. Leaders are doers, not watchers. So at this time, Deborah, Ryan, please come forward with your sponsors, Rick and Alex, and we will have you affix your Rotary pins. You can do this.
So I was at Bright State, the very first formal event I went to. And it was, the orchestras, they're just fabulous.
Okay. Let's get our pictures. Go ahead and put the pins on.
All right, Alex. Look at me. Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. That's all.
My fellow Rotarians, I'm very pleased to introduce our newest members, Deborah Gross and Ryan Ruffin.
Congratulations, welcome. I have to admit, I'm a little tired right now because I stayed up late last night to watch my favorite pro football team, the Detroit Lions, defeat the Chiefs in Kansas City. How about that? Yeah. And I realized walking in today that I haven't been that excited about one of my teams winning a road game since last November when Michigan came out and spanked Ohio State. So I'm not happy about that. Once a year. That's how we play, once a year. So Conrad Weaver started as a pre-med major at Cedarville University before switching to psychology and graduated in 1988. So how does a psychology major become an award-winning filmmaker and the president of Conjo Studios? You'll hear the answer to that question in his presentation, I'm sure. His documentary, The Great American Wheat Harvest, won an Emmy Award, and his most recent documentary, PTSD 9/11, chronicles the story of first responders at Ground Zero on September 11, 2001. One interesting note that Conrad will share today is that to help promote PTSD 9/11, he and a friend went on a little bike ride this summer, a ride that began in Astoria, Oregon, and concluded in Ocean City, Maryland. Please welcome my friend, Conrad Weaver. Welcome, Conrad. Great to see you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Mark, for the introduction. Just raise your hand if you can hear me. Just make sure that everyone can hear. Great. Thank you. Well, it's great to be here. I was born and raised in Northeast Ohio, so go Bucks. Mark, you're going to lose this year, so just want to let you know that. I have to say also that my son-in-law is also a Michigan fan. I'm not sure how he made his way into my family, but be that as it may. But yeah, how does a psychology major turn into a filmmaker? Well, it's a really windy path, and I won't bore you with all the details. But basically, I grew up with a camera in my hand. My dad had this film camera back in the day in the early 70s, and I learned how to use that. And so I ended up taking pictures all my life. In fact, when I was at Cedarville, I was on the staff of the campus newspaper as a photographer and ended up becoming the head photographer of my senior year. And so, but I never thought about making photography or film my career until I was in my 40s. And so I discovered video. I was working actually at a church, and we started producing videos, and they leaned on me to do that. And it wasn't long before people started hiring me to do outside work. I was doing corporate work. And then in 2010, my wife looked over my shoulder as I read a blog about harvesting wheat. And she was like, "You should make a movie about that." And so I did. And that's the one that was the Great American Wheat Harvest that I was privileged to win an Emmy Award for. And that kind of launched my documentary career. And over the course of the past 10, 13 years or so, documentaries have become my passion. And I've discovered that, telling stories that matter is really my purpose. And if I can tell a story through a documentary film, and now through the podcast that I host, if I can tell these stories and inspire people and motivate people to be better and to do better, then I think I've accomplished my purpose in life. And so it was in 2018, as I was wrapping up a documentary about the opioid crisis. And I know that your area of Ohio was especially hard hit with heroin use and opioid use. And I produced this film called Heroin's Grip. And while I was producing that film, I was invited to do ride-alongs with law enforcement. And so I was sitting in a police car one day, and the call came for service, and we responded to the scene. And unfortunately, it was a fatal overdose. And that was something that I wasn't used to seeing and experiencing. But all the first responders on scene, the police officers, the paramedics, they were like, "It's just Tuesday." And it wasn't a big deal to them. And so that got my mind churning. Okay, how do these scenes affect first responders? How does trauma impact our law enforcement, our paramedics? And I started researching this. And over the course of the next couple of months, I actually had a conversation with the officer I was with. And I asked her, "Is PTSD a thing with first responders?" And she was like, "Oh, wow, if you would only know, it's a huge deal. In fact, in the year 2019, 2 times the number of police officers died by suicide than who died in line of duty." That's a staggering number. I think the number was 238 police officers died by suicide in 2019. And that number continues to hold over the next few years. And even in fact, this year, I think the number is in the 50s of officers who died by suicide this year. And that not only affects police officers, but also firefighters and dispatchers and paramedics. And so over the course of the next 3 years, starting in 2019, I worked on this film. And I captured stories from across the country of first responders who have dealt with or are dealing with post-traumatic stress. And the documentary, we completed it last October, about a year ago, and we premiered it down in the Dallas, Texas area. And the film is now we're bringing it across the country in a variety of places. But I wanted to show you a brief trailer of the film, and so I'm going to share my screen here, and we're going to roll this trailer just so you can get a snapshot of what this story is all about. So hang on one second while I make this transition here. Okay. So here we go.
I went to a really dark place in my mind where suicide became an option. I was going through a divorce. I had lost a lot of relationships with people, and I was isolating.
While I was trying to heal from the traumas that had put me in the position that I was in, I suddenly lost all the support of all the guys I worked with.
Yeah, shots fired. Shots fired on Buffalo Roof. Starting your mouth, starting your mouth.
I felt guilty that he died.
About 15 minutes in, I'm just listening, and all you can hear is just people screaming. I was only 2 years into my career with Boston at this point.
I was so hypervigilant, and I couldn't shut my brain off.
They told me that I had PTSD and that they would give me some pills that would basically remove me from my feelings.
First responders are the toughest of the tough. They're the strongest of the strong, the most resilient people in our society. And they heroically sign up for these very, very difficult jobs in which, as a society, we outsource all of our trauma to them.
I remember the moment I was like, okay, I was up all night. It was just trauma after trauma after trauma. You know, the novelty of the job wore off really quick.
I couldn't think of how to get help without ruining my job.
There's a stigma in the profession that creates a barrier, a stigma in their agencies that prevents them from getting the help they need.
I didn't have somebody to talk to. I didn't have somebody that understood.
There was a part of me that said, okay, pick up the phone, call this person. This is how you're gonna get yourself out of this skillfully and safely.
I look back at that period of my life, and I just felt so completely, utterly isolated.
My ego wants to stop me from doing that. It wants to tell me, you got this. You don't need to let anybody know that this is going on.
And that's why I didn't know where to turn, and I beat myself up because I thought, I am such a mess, and I'm the only one.
I have 4 years till retirement, and I gotta be okay, and I gotta make it.
Right now, our profession is being challenged. We're going through a really, really difficult season. There's no time like the present where officer wellness has to be your #1 priority. We have to do a better job as leadership in our profession to understand that is what we're dealing with, people. And I think it's really important that that is our #1 resource, and that it has to be our #1 priority moving forward if we want to change this profession.
We're just coming into our second year now of really teaching structured training in wellness, mental health to the Firefighter Academy. Okay, I'm open to trying something different. If you had told me 4 years ago or 3 years ago I was doing yoga, I'd have laughed in your face. If I could plant seeds throughout the state of wellness, it'll get out there and start permeating and changing the culture.
Man, it's so much better when you have really amazing people in your life that you can walk through this stuff with. You don't have to do it alone.
All across our country, we have first responders in every community. Every city, every town, every community has first responders. And many are suffering from the traumas that they see. They see things that no one should see. They see and experience our worst days. You know, when we pick up the phone and call 911, it's generally not good, right? And so they come to those experiences no matter what they've had just an hour ago, no matter if they've had, a fatal car accident, earlier in the day or earlier in the night. They respond to us, and they put on their professional faces and their uniforms and their badges, and they respond. And so many of them carry the traumas of what they've experienced back home, and that affects them deeply. And so this film tells that story in an in-depth way, and we're bringing that film across the country. And so part of my own wellness journey, I thought, you know what, I've had all these traumatic stories that I've ingested into my system, and I thought, why don't I do something about that? And so years ago, I had friends that rode their bikes across the country. And so I said, well, why not? Why can't I do that? Why can't I take my film and ride a bicycle all the way across the country, stopping at with first responders, meeting first responders, maybe staying at firehouses. And I went to a friend of mine and I said, John, do you want to go on a bike ride? And he said, sure, where are we going? I said, well, we're going to go from Oregon to Maryland. And he thought for a second, and then he goes like, okay, I'm in. And just like that, we were getting ready to ride bikes across the country. And so that's what we did. And I'm going to show you a really quick clip, just a little highlights of the trip. And then I'll come back and talk a little bit about what we learned. And then I'll take some questions after that. So hang on one second. I'm going to share my screen again. So here's a little clip from our trip. Here we go.
Good morning. Here we go. The journey begins.
Let's do this thing.
Let's do this thing.
Well, there we go. That was a fun little snapshot of our trip. I wanted to keep these slides up because I want to talk a little bit about what we learned, what I learned personally. First of all, I learned that sometimes when you face a storm, you got to go through it. This was about 5 miles, or actually about 8 miles outside of West Yellowstone. And we were riding right into the storm. And we didn't have a choice to go directly into that. That was where our hotel was. And so I learned that sometimes when you face a storm, you have to face it head on and you have to ride and you have to go. And it's like that in life. You know, when we face difficult times in life, we have to face those things head on and go through them. And I was fortunate to have a friend with me to go through the storm with me. And I think that's important to bring people along your journey to go through those difficult times. I also learned that the mountaintop experiences can be quite amazing. This was on top of Togety Pass in Wyoming, and it was 9,600 feet. It was the highest elevation that we went through. We had a little bit extra help that day. We had a third rider that came with us, and so that was a really there again, a friend, and you know, having extra people with you to motivate you to get to the top of a challenging thing is really, really important. And then the other thing I learned is that the people that we meet along the way are just amazing. This was in Dayton, Ohio, just not far from where you guys are sitting right now. This was on the east side of Dayton. We just happened to ride by a firehouse and we saw these guys outside. So we stopped in and talked to them. They ended up being in the firehouse. That's the most active firehouse in the city of Dayton. They run, I think last year they said they ran 4,200 calls out of that one station. So you can imagine what their day and nights are like there. And so we were able to just to stop and talk with them, talk about their wellness and how what they do affects them. And we also actually came through Columbus, and John and I had, I don't know if you guys know about the the Doodah Parade in Columbus on July 4th. Well, John and I heard about it. We said, you know what? Let's go ride in the parade because anybody can join the parade. So we did, and we met this officer there helping to provide security. And again, just meeting the people along the way was an amazing journey. And just seeing what they do, the hard work that our civil servants do, the hard work that our public safety folks do to keep our community safe, and the importance of that. I just learned that we need to support our first responders and the work that they do. And I want to bring up this photo. This is the photo of Nicole. If you remember, she was in the trailer of the film. Nicole had some really, really great challenges. And unfortunately, since the making of the film, in fact, just about a month and a half ago, Nicole ended her life. And she had some deep struggles. And her story is important. And we did a film screening just a week after her funeral. And I was able to share that story with the audience there at this event in Pennsylvania. And I had a gentleman come up to me afterwards, and he said, I want you to know that Nicole saved my life. I said, well, please tell me about that. And he said, well, she was on a podcast a few years ago and told her story on this podcast. And because of that podcast story, I went and got help. So Nicole's story, Nicole's life has meaning and purpose. And even in her death and in her passing, that she's no longer with us, her story still has purpose and meaning and is impacting lives. And so I just want to recognize her, and just that, no matter what you're going through, no matter what struggles you're having, no matter how dark the day is, I want to say, if your heart is beating, that you still have hope. If your heart beats, you have hope. And I wish that was something that Nicole understood, and I wish she would have reached out. And so I want to encourage you that if you're struggling with depression, if you're struggling with the darkness that sometimes can overtake us, I want to encourage you to reach out and ask for help. But even again, if that isn't something that has affected you, I want you to be the helper. I want you to check in with people. And just having Nicole part of my life made me realize how much more I need to check in with my friends. And so sending them a text message, sending them a card, just doing those little things on a regular basis keeps us connected and keeps us, you never know what difference you will make in someone's life. And so for me, as a filmmaker, bringing these stories to the world is important because it shows the impact that one person's life can have on the world, just like Nicole had that impact on this individual, and she's had impact on thousands of first responders. She was a dispatcher and well known in the 911 community, and her life and the way she lived her life made an impact on a lot of people. And so as a filmmaker, as a storyteller, as one who's the privilege of capturing these stories, I take that responsibility seriously. But I also want to bring these films to the world so that we can make a difference and that we can create a better world for all of us to live in. And I hope that that's what this film accomplishes. So I know we have a few minutes left. I want to take some questions from you. Anyone that has a question, I may need someone on the microphone so I can hear it, but if you just raise your hand or just shout out a question.
And I apologize, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right, and if you said this, I apologize. When and how will the film be released, and how can it be accessed by the public?
Yes, that's a great question. Right now, we are in distribution. We are taking the film around the country, having events. Later this month, I'll be in South Carolina for a number of events. Then I'll be on the West Coast, and we've had screenings of the film, public screenings of the film all over the country. We will continue to do that in the next months and even years to come. But on October 28th, which is National First Responder Day, October 28th is Saturday night next month in October, the film will be released, hopefully on Amazon. I'm working those details out right now, but it will be released for the general public to have access to it. First responder and public safety agencies can get it now for use within their agency, and many have done so all over the country. And the price is a little bit higher for public safety just because of the multiple people watching it, but many public safety agencies have purchased the film. But October 28th, it will be released on Amazon and available for the general public to access.
Thank you.
Other questions? What's usually in your documentaries, what's the kind of lead up time? How long does it take, or does that just depend on the project? How's that work?
Yeah, that's a great question. It kind of depends on the project, and it also depends on how the funding comes together. Whenever you have an idea for a film, and all the films that I've produced, and I've produced this is my 4th feature-length documentary, I come up with an idea, and then I got to figure out how to pay for that and how to keep the bills paid and all that. So oftentimes, for example, the Great American Wheat Harvest, I had the idea. I connected with an organization that gave me some seed money, and then we took a whole year to raise the rest of the funds. We raised a little over $300,000 for that one. For this particular project, PTSD 911, we raised about $85,000, which is a micro budget. Basically, was enough for me to travel and pay my travel expenses. But it took about 3 years from the time that the film was, the idea came to the time we released it last November in Dallas. Was about a 3-year time span. And again, I'm not complaining about that, but it's something, it was a work of love, a kind of labor of love. I had enough money to pay to do my traveling and to pay for that kind of thing. But so that's what I do. I just bring the films. And fortunately, I have a wife with a really good job, and she helps. She supports me. In fact, in this film, she is listed as an executive producer on the film because I couldn't do these things without her help and without her blessing. So she kind of green lights my project, so to speak.
Alex?
First of all, as a former first responder, and I know there's another one in here as well. When we first started, we were considered a wimp talking about struggling. What kind of programs did you see that were very successful in the movie?
Yeah, that's a great question. We feature a couple of agencies that are doing some amazing things. The first is down in Garland, Texas, the Garland, Texas PD. They actually have a chief who believes in wellness, and he has created and is creating a wellness culture within their agency. And so he treats a mental health issue exactly the same as if it were a knee issue. So if you have a knee injury and you are out for surgery and recovery, you don't lose your job. You still have a job. And he treats a mental health issue the same way. In fact, we feature the story in the film of one of their detectives who ended up being involved in an officer-involved shooting, ended up going down a very bad path. And he was able to go to the chief and get help without losing his job, without any repercussions that way. And that's not the norm. Typically in many first responder agencies, especially law enforcement, if you come to your sergeant or your officers and say, hey, I'm having a problem drinking, or I'm having suicidal ideation, then the first thing they do is, well, give me your badge, give me your gun, go on the sidelines. And no one wants to do that. And so they typically don't say anything. And so now you're carrying this stuff and you're not dealing with it. And if you don't say anything, now you're going on the street. And as someone said recently, unhealthy first responders make unhealthy decisions. And so when you have unhealthy first responders out on the street, you're going to have stories end up on the evening news. And so there are many programs that are working, like the agency in Garland. They have a whole variety, and like my friend Todd said we have a whole buffet of options for our officers to pick and choose from. They have equine therapy, they have other mental health service providers that they are in network and they can go to. And so, and peer support is a huge thing, a huge part of that. So trained peer support, officers, firefighters, people who are trained to listen and trained to hear other people's stories. And so if one officer is perhaps struggling, they can go to a peer and say, hey, I'm drinking too much. Is there a program? Is there something I can go to? And then that peer supporter will direct them to a culturally competent organization. And that's the important thing. There are certain therapists who have never experienced what first responders experience. And I've had firefighters tell me that, yeah, I went to a therapist, told him my story, and the therapist started crying. Well, that's not the kind of therapist you need to go to. You need to have a therapist that understands the culture of first responders. You have therapists that understand, how first responders live and breathe and what their jobs are like. And so the whole program is designed to help therapists understand that and to be trained to deal with first responders. And so I know in your area there are a number of organizations that provide services for first responders. In fact, I think there's one up in Springfield that I'm aware of that provides services to help first responders. But there's resources available, even nationwide resources available. And just this past week, I launched a podcast called the First Responder Wellness Podcast. So I encourage you guys to listen to that if you can, if you have interest in that. And in there, we talk about actually Todd Jerry from Garland PD. He helped design and launch a peer support program, a nationwide peer support program. And so they are in the process of rolling that out in conjunction with NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness. So it's a great program that first responder agencies can get and be a part of. So it's a great question.
Hey, Dave. Hey, Mark. I know you're in the midst of PTSD 9/11, Conrad. But what's next?
That's a great question. So right now, what's next is working on the podcast. I actually have another second podcast that I'm going to bring back up. Is called Explore Purpose. And back on my wall back here, you can see kind of a logo, Explore Purpose. And that's a podcast that I produce that talks about purpose and meaning in life. And so I interview people and talk about how to discover purpose and meaning. So I'll work on that. I'll work on the First Responder Wellness Podcast. There's about 3 other documentaries that are percolating. And I have one that I really want to do, but the boss, my executive producer wife, has said a hard no, because it involves going to a war zone, an active war zone over in Eastern Europe. But that's a project that is near and dear to my heart. And I'm hoping that she will sometime soon say yes. So we'll see.
Okay. Thanks so much for speaking with us today.
And thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Our club has a tradition of donating a book in honor of our speaker to the Greene County Public Library. And this one is Even Superheroes Get Scared. So chosen by somebody very thoughtful. So, all right. And so we'll have Mark sign it on your behalf, and it'll be in the library. If you're in town and you want to search for that, you can search under your own name. Okay, so next week we have Carolyn Sargent speaking to us about prisoner of war and missing in action from a family's perspective. Our greeters are Pete Landrum and Alex Zaharieff next week. Keep an eye on the upcoming programs through the website and Facebook. And the sign-up sheets are over in the corner here if you'd like to participate in any of our projects out there. Is there anything else for the good of the club? Yes.
For anybody with mental health issues, there's a national hotline, 988. So you don't have to worry about trying to find someone in your area. It's completely anonymous. You can call, it's like 911, but it's 988. And for veterans, it's 211, and that's for United Way. And you also have a mental health counselor here who has dealt with PTSD. If anybody needs to talk to me anonymously, it's all confidential.
Thank you, Karen. All right, if we'll stand for the pledge. Conrad, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Sure.
I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hey, good job.
Oh, thank you.
I'll give you a call on my way back to school.
Okay. It sounds good.
Yeah. Sir. Great program.